All right, everybody, we're going to get started in just a moment.
Yeah. So there was an interesting stat we were going to talk about at the start is that 36% of people, when they click from another website onto like a landing page, will go up and click the logo right away to go to the home page. And so 1/3 of people don't even really pay attention to a landing page. They want to go right to the home. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Because I want to find out that main
Sure,
information.
you want to learn about it. Yep.
Exactly. So it's interesting, the tactic of like streamlining navigation, and then even maybe the logo on the website, changing out how that works on landing pages. So again, you can kind of squeeze people down into that content.
Yeah, because that's kind of the shortcut to learn more about the company, to move out of there.
I think we naturally want to do that. We click on a page, we go there, but we want to find out what they're really about first.
Absolutely.
And we see that in stats. People click off of the homepage of a site, and then they'll go back to the article or the thing that they clicked into.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting.
Absolutely. No, that's a good one. So welcome, everyone. We are here. This is the SaaS Coach. We're talking brand strategy. This is episode 3. I'm Tony Zayas. This is Andy Halco. What are we talking about today, Andy? What are we diving into?
So in the SaaS Coach show that we've been talking about web strategy and really going through some different tactics and principles.
Yeah.
If you are on our page, you can actually download that guide underneath that has our 10 principles for improving website conversion. And it's got a lot of really great content. We've already talked about the first principle, done some other things. And so today, we're really going to dive in and talk about how you increase conversion, especially on landing pages, but generally across your site. And that's really what the whole white paper and everything that we're talking about is focused on, is how do we increase conversions.
Yeah.
But today we're really going to dive into some really interesting tactics, especially related to the buying cycle of people as they go through a site and what you want to offer them.
So great point there, because as people are at different stages of the buying cycle, what they're looking for is different. So we have to account for that, and we have to have options to each of those different people depending on where they're at. We have to give things that are valuable and interesting to them, right?
That's a really good summary. I guess the show's over, so that was perfect. But yes, there are different buying cycles. Just to show it off a little bit, we always talk about, what's the percentage of visitors that are coming to a site.
Yeah.
The majority tend to be what we call the browsers. And think of yourself. You're just kind of out there looking for things, you're browsing, maybe you're searching a topic, you're trying to find a solution for something, but you're really just looking around, looking at multiple websites. I almost call it the can you make the tab list, because I don't know about you, but I'm researching something, and if I find something that I like that I want to come back to, I just leave it as an empty tab, and then I go look for something else to come up with my compiled list of these are the 5 or 6 things that I want to come back to and do some more due diligence.
Yep.
And so really at that stage, when people are browsing, they're moving very quickly through it. They're scanning the website. Our last episode talked a lot about that, as how you want to make content so that it's easily scannable. That's really for these browsers and being in that stage. The next highest one is what I call the researchers. They're a little bit past that, like, just scan the site stage, and they're just trying to get a little bit more information, understand, does this fit my needs, does it have the features that I want, the services, whatever they're specifically looking for. So they're not quite at the stage that maybe they're ready to buy yet and really dig in, but they're also not just kind of scanning around and just looking at an extremely high level.
And there's a good chance they're probably comparing as well. They made your tab, right? So it's one of the ones that you want to actually dive in and learn about more.
Yep.
And then when you go back to it, you're probably putting a more critical eye to it, and also thinking about what does this site have versus these others.
Exactly. More critical eye, and I think you're also looking at sharing this with other people in your organization.
Good point.
At the browse stage, usually that's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
People are just doing their own, scanning, and they're creating their list. But at the research stage, they're looking to gather that deeper information, but then also potentially share it with other people. And so we've got to think about that in the buying cycle too, is that we want the conversions to be something that are easily shared with other people.
Definitely.
And then the final stage, and usually this is the least number of people, are the people that are ready to buy today. And so it's really somebody that's like, I've got a problem, I need a solution, I want to talk to somebody, I'm ready to go. And it's either that they've already done some of that due diligence and they're really deep in their process, or they've got a really significant pain that they have to solve, and they really are, their need is very high. And so those are the different ones that we look at. We usually say buyers are the least, because when you think about it, I mean, we're going to have the most visitors to our site that are in those initial stages and the research stages. And then we're going to be using things like marketing automation or other tactics to get the buyers back into the process. So that's our smallest one, but still, those are the people that are really ready to go. So we want to make sure that we're reaching all of these different audiences.
Yeah. So there are different ways to engage these different types of users.
And that's exactly what we're talking about. And I think that's the key that I do want to get to first is, you know, we want to make sure that we're targeting and providing options for all of these.
Yeah.
I think our natural tendency is, let's just put a form on the website and our phone number, and we're not really paying attention to what are the other audiences, especially the ones that make up the majority of our pie.
Yeah.
And if we're not providing options to them, we're really missing out on providing ways for people to convert and get into our funnels. So that's a big piece. So I typically talk about on pages the different commitment levels.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about, you know, where you're at in your buying cycle and what's that commitment level. So if you're early on and you're just that browser looking around, you want really low commitment things.
Sure.
Stuff that you can download like a white paper and read on your own time. So I can take it back and maybe I'll read it at night, or I'll engage with it in some other way, or I save an infographic or a quick video, or maybe I'm just signing up for a newsletter. It's, again, very low commitment. I don't have to speak to anybody, because to me that's a higher commitment level. I don't have to show up for anything. It's really just on my own terms that I get to engage with you.
Yeah.
And so you really want to make sure for that biggest audience, the browsers, that you're offering some of these low commitment pieces like the newsletters and downloads. The next one is really medium commitment. So if I'm further along and I'm doing my research, and now, like you said, a little bit of due diligence, I'm doing some comparison, I'm making sure that this really fits my needs, I'm now in a stage where I'm willing to commit a little bit more. And so something like a webinar or a product, a calculator that compares budgets,
Gotcha.
or a quiz, something that now it's medium commitment, because for a webinar, I've got to show up in 10 days and watch it and spend some time. Or I've got to fill out 2 or 3 pages of questions to get an answer about how does this product compare to others. And so at this stage that I'm a researcher, I'm willing to commit more because I need to get more information.
Yeah.
And so we really want to offer that, but the information that people are going to get hopefully has more depth to it and provides the value that they need at that stage. And then the final one is really high commitment. So those are for our buyers.
Yeah.
If I'm going to start a trial, I'm going to fill out a form to talk to an expert, I'm going to make a phone call. Any of those different actions are really high commitment, because I've got to talk to somebody. If I'm doing a trial or a demo, I'm going to have to go in and figure it out and put information in, maybe bring other people in my organization into it so that they can experience it. And so the commitment level is extremely high.
Yeah.
And so those are really for those people that are the buyers and are in that stage where they've got a high need and they have to take action, or they've already gone through your low and medium commitment levels and they're now ready because they've done their full due diligence.
Yeah.
And so the key is that we've got to have all of these. And I usually say, if you're doing like an advertising campaign or something else and you're building out a landing page for that, if you don't have all 3 of these commitment levels, there are visitors that are coming to that page that their needs aren't being met.
Yeah, and you're losing
and
out on that
you're
opportunity.
losing a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. So I tend to see a lot of sites that have, the high commitment conversion. conversions, right? Talk to somebody. And
Yes.
for me, when I'm just doing that first stage, browsing, kind of determining if it's going to make the tab, and I'm going to dive deeper to research, that scares me away. I don't want to have to
100%.
sign any. I don't want to hit a button. Someone's going to call me. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So I think this is just really powerful stuff, and that taking this approach and putting options for everybody, and I'll get to a point where if I'm ready, then I'm ready to talk to somebody, and I'm fine with that. But early on, I don't want to see that. I see a lot that are doing that, and I don't see those other options for me in a lot of cases.
You know, and it's funny, I hear a lot about like downloads and newsletters, you know, no one wants to sign up for that stuff anymore. I don't necessarily disagree, but my point is that if you're offering a ton of value, people will.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge that most people in marketing don't understand, is that there's kind of a value curve.
Sure.
To how much value are you getting from this versus giving away your information and what that means to you.
Yeah.
And so if you're offering like a download that's really generic and doesn't provide a lot of insight, and it's not intriguing from a title and description standpoint, of course, no one's going to download it. But if you look at something like, I always like to go back to things like trend reports or industry data. What's something that I want is that if I go to a site on a specific topic and they say, okay, we've got a great benchmarking tool that shows, you know, people in your industry and how they're using something, I would be really interested in understanding, okay, what are other people doing?
Yeah.
The value to me is high because that might be information I can't get somewhere else. And so I think that's a big piece, is that downloads and newsletters and other things like that, they do work. You just have to have the right tactics.
I think a big part of that's a great point, and I think most people do kind of question that, especially like newsletter, like subscribe to our newsletter. It's like, why? Why should I, right? And a lot of times we're seeing, you know, newsletter subscription for newsletter subscribers' sake, right? To gain more subscribers. You got to put the value out there and say what you're going to get if you sign up for this, and it has to be something compelling to that point. But if it is, it usually does.
Well, that adds the other piece is, I think, relevancy. You know, we've had a lot of success getting signups when the topic of the page matches. You know, the download has to be relevant to the page that someone's on. So if, you know, we're talking about websites for SaaS and we've got a killer SaaS download, it's more likely someone's going to do that. Same thing if we have a newsletter call to action that says get SaaS, you know, growth tips on a page, that it's so focused and relevant to that person. Versus, I think one of the tactics people can do with newsletters, as an example, is have the same call to action: sign up for our newsletter. Well, you're not really telling me what it's going to be about, what I'm going to get out of it. But if you make the name, you know, you're on a page about website design or about SaaS or whatever the specific topic is, and you say sign up to get tips about this, you know, monthly. And then I like to use the old behavioral psychology thing, tell people about how many other people are signed up for it, to say, okay, I wouldn't be the only one, there's a big list here. And so there are some tactics that we can do that I think, you know, you go into most companies, they say downloads don't work, newsletters don't work. This low commitment stuff is what most people kind of feel uncomfortable with. I disagree. I think if you're providing the value and the relevancy, you can actually get the conversions that you need.
A lot of it is about how it's done, not just what it is.
Exactly. And well, and that's everything to me in marketing is, you know, it's not just about doing the tactics. It's the strategy. It goes back to what we talk about all the time. You know, anybody can create a white paper. Anybody can create an article, do all of these things in marketing. But what is the strategic plan behind it? You know, are we thinking about what is true value for our audience? Are we being extremely targeted? Are we offering the right, you know, conversions at the right time, in the right format with the right messaging? And so this is a lot about, like, conversion is a science, and it is all of these pieces tied together. This system of saying low, medium, high is just one of those pieces that fits in the overall strategic plan of significantly increasing conversions.
So just because I can't think of a better example than what we're doing right now, right? If you're tuned in here to this show and this is of value to you, we're telling you can go and get our white paper at SaaS.coach. You go there and you get what we think is a really good piece. I mean, it's what
good
drives
information.
all this information. So if this snippet that we're talking about today is interesting to you, that PDF will probably be really valuable to you.
Exactly.
And so we tried to very mindfully pair the two pieces together. I think that's just a good example, but we're trying to do that, right? We want more people that want that information, because that's what we do, is work with those type of people. And I think it's mindfully putting together your offer and then properly explaining the value, what's in it for me. If I'm going to subscribe, what am I getting? A newsletter? Oh, I've always wanted a newsletter.
Yeah,
Said
right.
no one ever, right?
Yeah.
What's in it, and what's the benefit that I'm going to get out of it?
100%.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the low, medium, and high commitments, because it's really different. I think a lot of times we think in terms of call to action, conversion as like one thing, and that's a big mistake.
Yeah.
And I think that illustrates that perfectly.
Well, it's matching it to, again, that buying cycle,
Yeah.
what people's mental place is. And, just to kind of extend that, I think we've talked about this graphic a couple times that we've got, but really looking at the different types of content. And at the top, we look at awareness to purchase. Where are people in the buying cycle? Awareness is what we talked about, like the browsers. Purchase is those buyers and the smaller audience. And then emotional, the rational, a lot of times tends to have to do with our product. If we're more B2B, we tend to be in the more rational. If we're more B2C, we're in the more emotional. But that's not always the case. The one thing I do push back on is that there are buyers in the B2B space that have emotional connection to what they're looking at.
Yeah.
If you're in HR and you're looking at selling a culture product, it might be a little bit more about emotional versus maybe if you're doing data science, it's down here in the rational. But the great thing about this is I think most people look at the standard types of content. Our white paper download, our newsletter sign up, our webinar.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at this graphic,
A lot.
yeah, if we're in awareness and we're trying to be emotional, we're talking about games and competitions, logos of other people that are using our product, quizzes, these things that are, again, more fun or entertaining. They're more about awareness. People can do them quickly. The commitment level is very low.
Yeah.
But as we move down into things like rational and purchase, checklist, webinar, calculators, data sheets, reading a longer case study, this stuff, it's a higher commitment level, but it's giving information that people need to make a decision. And so when we look at this graphic and the types of content, again, we shouldn't necessarily limit ourselves to just the regular old white papers. There's trend reports, there's e-news, there's demo videos, there's interactive demos, community forums, trend reports. I mean, there's so many different types of content.
Yeah.
And if you're smart about it and you think about the low commitment all the ways to the high commitment, you think about the mindset of your buyer, you can get a sense of here's the 5 or 6 things that we should really focus on, and making sure we're offering something at each commitment level for where our buyers are at.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that really opens it up, because I think a big challenge people have, they feel so limited that the newsletter, webinar, consultation, talk to an expert.
Well, we've been expanding this. I mean, this is just a piece, but even for us, with our clients, I mean, a video cast isn't necessarily in here like we're doing, or we've done kind of like live roundtables where people get on a Zoom meeting with 10 people and they facilitate a roundtable. We've talked about like micro animations with our clients where, it's telling stories in 15 seconds in an animated way about the problem that they solve. And so this list seems comprehensive, but I think with what we're capable of with technology, with animation, video, and the internet with podcasting and video casting and AR and VR, I mean, this is continuing to open up.
Yeah.
It's just more about finding what are the different pieces that we need at the commitment levels, and where are our buyers at kind of in that emotional mindset range.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, so that's really our piece for this episode about conversion, again, I think the whole white paper that we have is all about conversion.
Yeah.
This is just an interesting discussion because it really looks at that mindset of making sure that you have multiple conversions at the different buying mentalities or cycles for users. And if you're not doing that, I think the key is that you might be missing out on a huge audience of people if you're just focused on those really high commitment conversions. And so if you're doing any of this stuff, you're rebuilding your website or you're making small improvements, I mean, literally going in and making a couple of these changes that we talked about today could take that conversion rate and double it or triple it, which totally changes the game for any business.
Absolutely. So go and download the white paper if you haven't gotten it yet. SaaS.coach. You can download that there. And I would suggest if you're following along, you've been listening, each of these little lessons, you can go and kind of create a little actionable plan for yourself. Just, do I meet this? Am I hitting the points? Am I hitting the marks? By following these principles, and you can make some changes and get some results out of that. So I'd encourage you guys to certainly download the piece and put the stuff to the test. If you have questions, feel free to leave comments for us, and we will get back to you if we get something. You guys bring something interesting up. We're more than happy to talk about that and have further discussion here live. But with that being said, thanks, Andy.
Oh, thank you guys. We appreciate it. Check it out. Again, feel free. I want to just echo it. Ask questions. We love questions. We love interactions. So
absolutely.
Looking forward to seeing everybody next week. It'll be fun.
Very good. We'll see you next time.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.